The research station Kepler 442b floated in the dark between stars like a metal island in an ocean of nothing, and Dr. Hyunwoo Kim sat at his workstation, listening to signals from across the galaxy as he did every night for the past 3 years. Since arriving at this remote outpost, the Galactic Council had assigned humanity the station as a gesture of goodwill when they finally granted Earth membership 50 years ago, and Hyunwoo often wondered if they put them here because it was so far from anything important that humans could not cause trouble. Tonight felt different, though, as his instruments picked up something that made his blood run cold, and the signal came from the Aquari system 40 light-years away, where the peaceful, amphibian people lived on their water world in harmony with nature. The transmission was broken and filled with static, but Hyunwoo could make out enough words to understand what was happening, and children were crying in the background while adult Aquari voices spoke in their musical language about ships in the sky and death falling from above. "Commander Park, please. Come to the communications array immediately." Hyunwoo called over the station intercom, and his voice carried more urgency than he intended, but this could not wait. Commander Sojin Park arrived within minutes, still wearing her sleep clothes, but alert as always. And she had commanded this station since its construction, and never missed anything important happening under her watch. "What do you have for me, Doctor?" Sojin asked as she moved to stand behind his chair and looked at the scrolling data on his screens, distress signals from the Aquari homeworld. Hyunwoo replied and played back the clearest transmission he had recorded. The sounds that came from the speakers made Sojin step back and close her eyes for a moment, and even through the static and alien language, the terror was unmistakable. "How long has this been going on?" she asked. "The signals started 6 hours ago, but they are getting weaker," Hyunwoo said and pointed to his analysis charts. "Either their transmitters are being destroyed or there are fewer people left to send them." Sojin moved to the main display and called up star charts of the region around the Aquari system, and red markers showed the positions of known Vaxthari Empire ships in that sector. "The reptiles are at it again," she said quietly, and her voice carried years of frustration with Galactic Council policies. Vaxthari Empire controlled the Outer Rim through fear and violence, and everyone knew they enslaved weaker species and stripped their worlds of resources. But the Council called it internal territorial management and refused to interfere. "Commander, we have to do something," Hyunwoo said and turned in his chair to face her. "These are not soldiers dying, these are families, children, innocent people who never hurt anyone. Doctor, you know the protocols as well as I do." Sojin replied. But her voice lacked conviction. "Humanity has been granted council membership on the condition that we respect the sovereignty of established galactic powers." "Sovereignty," Hyunwoo repeated and felt anger building in his chest. "Is that what they call genocide now?" Sojin walked to the observation window and stared out at the stars for a long time, while more transmissions continued to arrive, each one weaker than the last, and finally she turned back to face the communications array. "Send a message to Admiral Choi on Luna Station," she said, and her voice was steady now with decision made. "Tell him we have a situation that requires immediate consultation." "What kind of consultation?" Hyunwoo asked. "The kind that might end our membership in the Galactic Council." Sojin replied. 3 hours later, Admiral Taemin Choi appeared on the main screen from his office 30,000 light-years away on Luna Station, and behind him Hyunwoo could see displays showing ship movements and tactical data that seemed far too detailed for a simple research coordination facility. "Commander Park, your message was received and understood," Admiral Choi said without preamble. "How certain are you about the situation in the Aquari system?" "Completely certain, sir," Sojin replied and gestured for Hyunwoo to play the recordings again. Admiral Choi listened without expression, but his eyes grew cold as the sounds of dying families filled the communication channel, and when the playback ended, he was quiet for almost a minute. "Commander, are you prepared to accept the consequences of acting on this information?" he finally asked. "Sir, the consequences of not acting are unacceptable," Sojin answered. "Very well," Admiral Choi said, and something shifted in his expression that made him look dangerous. "You are authorized to conduct humanitarian rescue operations in the Aquari system, using whatever resources you deem necessary." Sir, our station only has 2 small research vessels. Hyun-woo interrupted. How can we possibly? Dr. Kim, Admiral Choi said and smiled for the first time during the conversation. Did you really think humanity would build a research station 40 light-years from home without proper protection? The Admiral touched something on his desk and new displays appeared on their screens, showing ship signatures that had been hidden in the asteroid field around their station, and Hyun-woo counted 6 vessels that registered as much larger than any research ship should be. The merchant vessel Busan Dream and her escort ships have been conducting deep space surveys in your area for the past month. Admiral Choi continued. They are at your disposal, Commander Park, along with their quite capable crews. So-jin straightened to attention, and for the first time since Hyun-woo had known her, she looked like the military officer she truly was, rather than a simple research station commander. Understood, sir, she said. What are our rules of engagement? Save who you can, Admiral Choi replied. Protect the innocent, and if anyone tries to stop you from doing your duty as human beings, then show them why Earth has remained peaceful for 50 years. Sir, Hyun-woo said before he could stop himself. What do you mean, show them why Earth has remained peaceful? Admiral Choi looked directly at him through the screen and his expression was completely serious. Doctor, the galaxy thinks humans are weak because we choose peace over conflict, he said. They believe our technology is limited because our ships appear simple and our weapons seem basic, but they have never seen what humans can do when someone threatens innocent life. The communication ended, and So-jin immediately began issuing orders to prepare for departure, while Hyun-woo sat in his chair trying to process what he had just learned about his own species. Within 12 hours, the hidden ships revealed themselves and moved into formation around the research station, and they looked nothing like the simple merchant vessels their identification transponders claimed them to be as. The small fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace toward the Aquari system. Hyun-woo realized that everything he thought he knew about humanity's place in the galaxy was about to change forever. And somewhere in the dark between stars, the first shots of a war that would reshape galactic civilization were about to be fired. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Aquari system, and what they found there made even veteran spacers curse under their breath, as burning cities dotted the blue-green surface of the water world below, while massive Vaxthari ships hung in orbit like metal vultures feeding on the dead Captain Dong-hyun. Lee stood on the bridge of the assault frigate Seoul's Pride and watched his tactical displays update with enemy positions as his ship's systems scanned the battlefield, with sensors far more advanced than any alien species suspected human vessels possessed. 12 Vaxthari heavy cruisers and at least 30 smaller escort ships, reported systems operator Ye-jin Kang from her station. They have orbital bombardment, platforms targeting civilian population centers and landing craft delivering ground forces to major cities. How many refugees can we extract? Commander So-jin Park asked from the command channel as her ship Busan Dream coordinated the rescue. Fleet, maybe 50,000 if we can reach the northern continent before the Vaxthari notice us, Dong-hyun replied while studying the tactical situation. But Commander, those bombardment platforms will spot us the moment we enter low orbit. Then, we need a distraction, So-jin said, and her voice carried the calm determination that had made her legendary among human crews. Captain Lee, are your weapon systems ready for full combat deployment? Dong-hyun looked at his weapons officer, who nodded, grimly while bringing online systems that had been hidden behind false bulkheads and disguised as civilian equipment for years, and the Seoul's Pride transformed from a simple escort vessel into something far more deadly. All systems green, Commander, Dong-hyun reported, but we are facing overwhelming odds here. Captain, the odds are only overwhelming if you fight like the galaxy expects. So-jin replied, show them how humans really fight. The Seoul's Pride accelerated toward the enemy fleet, while broadcasting standard merchant identification codes and requesting permission to evacuate civilians from the planet's surface. But the Vaxthari response came in the form of plasma bolts that lit up the darkness between ships' evasive maneuvers. Dong-hyun ordered and felt his ship respond with acceleration that should have been impossible for a vessel of its apparent class. Yejin, give me everything the sensors picked up about their formation and movement patterns. They are using standard Vaxthari Battle Formation 7. Yejin replied while her fingers danced across control surfaces. Heavy ships in the center with escorts spread wide for area denial, but Captain, their reaction time is slower than expected. Because they think we are helpless merchants, Donghyun said with a smile that would have terrified any Vaxthari who could see it. Let them keep thinking that until it is too late. The Soul's Pride dove toward the planet's surface, trailing plasma fire from pursuing enemy ships while broadcasting distress calls that sounded appropriately panicked, but were actually coded tactical updates to the rest of the human fleet. Target the bombardment platform over the northern continent, Donghyun ordered as his ship rolled through a series of maneuvers that no merchant vessel should have been capable of performing. One shot, one kill. The frigate's main gun fired a projectile that moved so fast it appeared as just a brief flash of light, but when it struck the Vaxthari platform, the entire structure simply ceased to exist in a ball of superheated metal and escaping atmosphere. What the hell was that? Came the voice of a Vaxthari commander over the open communication channels. Merchant ships do not carry antimatter weapons. They do now. Donghyun replied and switched his ship's identification transponder to display its true designation as Earth Defense Force Frigate 077. The reaction from the alien fleet was immediate and chaotic as ships that had been lazily pursuing what they thought was a defenseless refugee haulers suddenly found themselves facing something that had just destroyed a heavily armored orbital platform with a single shot. All ships, this is Commander Park, came Sojin's voice over the tactical network. Execute Operation Deepwater. What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations as the human rescue fleet revealed capabilities that no alien species had imagined possible. From the supposedly peaceful inhabitants of Earth, the Busan Dream deployed fighter craft that had been hidden in cargo containers, while its escort ships dropped electronic warfare pods that jammed Vaxthari communications and targeting systems. Across the entire battle space, Captain Donghyun brought his ship around in a tight loop that used the planet's gravity well to accelerate beyond what alien ships could match, and fired a spread of guided missiles that struck 3 enemy cruisers before their crews even realized they were under attack. Yejin, track all enemy movements and predict their responses, Donghyun ordered while his ship danced between incoming fire, with movements that seemed random but followed patterns programmed by artificial intelligence far more advanced than anything the galaxy knew humans possessed. Their formation is collapsing, Yejin reported. They are trying to regroup, but our electronic warfare is preventing coordinated movement. Then we press the advantage, Donghyun said, and opened fire with secondary weapons that filled space with projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. The Vaxthari had expected to face desperate refugees in converted cargo ships, but instead found themselves fighting an enemy that moved faster, thought quicker, and hit harder than anything in their experience, while rescue shuttles slipped past the chaos to begin evacuating Aquari civilians from the planet's surface. Human vessel, this is Battle Group Commander. Thexivar, came a transmission from the largest Vaxthari ship. You are interfering in internal Imperial affairs and will withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Commander, this is Captain Lee, Donghyun replied, while his ship destroyed another enemy escort with a perfectly placed shot. The only consequences here will be yours if you continue targeting civilians. Impossible. The alien commander responded, humans do not have this technology. Commander, you are about to learn that humans have been very polite for the past 50 years, Donghyun said as his ship's main gun cycled for another shot. That politeness ends today. The battle raged for 6 hours, with human ships striking from unexpected angles and disappearing before enemy forces could respond effectively, while refugee transports loaded with Aquari families slipped away toward safe hyperspace jump points. When the shooting finally stopped, 12 Vaxthari ships drifted lifeless in orbit, while others limped away, with damage that would take months to repair, and the human fleet had lost only 2 escort vessels whose crews had sacrificed themselves to buy time for civilian evacuations. All ships report, Commander Sojin called as the last refugee transport Jump to safety. Soul's Pride operational but ammunition depleted. Dong Hyun responded while damage control teams worked to repair his battered ship. Rescue operation successful. Came reports from the transport commanders. 87,000. Aquari civilians evacuated along with planetary government officials and cultural archives. As the human fleet prepared to withdraw from the system, Dong Hyun received a priority message from Earth that would change everything, and Admiral Choi appeared on his screen with an expression that mixed pride and grim determination. Captain Lee, your actions today have been broadcast across the galaxy through quantum communication networks. The Admiral said, every species now knows that humans can fight, and more importantly, that we will fight to protect innocent life. Sir, what are our orders? Dong Hyun asked. Prepare for war, Captain. Admiral Choi replied, the Vaxthari Empire has just declared humans an enemy of galactic peace, and they are mobilizing their entire fleet to destroy Earth. With respect, sir, Dong Hyun said while looking at the wreckage of enemy ships floating around his vessel. They are welcome to try. The communication ended, and Captain Dong Hyun Lee looked out at the stars, knowing that his species had just announced their presence to the galaxy. In a way that could never be taken back, and somewhere in the darkness between worlds, fleets were already moving toward a confrontation that would determine whether humanity became the galaxy's protector or its next victim. Earth's response to the Vaxthari declaration of war came faster than any alien species thought possible. As hidden military installations across the solar system came online and revealed the true scope of human preparation for galactic conflict, Admiral Taemin Choi stood in the command center buried deep beneath Luna's surface and watched as strategic displays showed the deployment of forces that had been concealed for half a century, while politicians spoke of peace and exploration. General Nam, report on mobilization status. Admiral Choi spoke into his communication system. All planetary defense grids are operational, sir, came the reply from General Woo Jin Nam, who commanded ground forces throughout the solar system. Mars garrison is at full readiness, and the asteroid belt shipyards are beginning final assembly on Project Hammer. How long until the fleet is ready for offensive operations? Admiral Choi asked while studying intelligence reports from across the galaxy. 72 hours, sir, General Nam replied. But Admiral, the enemy outnumbers us 50-1 across their entire empire. Numbers only matter if you fight the kind of war they expect. Admiral Choi said with a smile that his staff had learned meant someone was about to have a very bad day. General, we are not going to fight their war. Across the solar system, human military forces that had been disguised as civilian operations for decades began revealing their true purpose as merchant ships deployed. Weapon systems and mining platforms reconfigured themselves into mobile battle stations. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter had been humanity's greatest deception, as what alien observers believed was a simple mining and manufacturing operation was actually the largest military shipyard in the galaxy, with production capabilities that could build entire fleets in weeks rather than years. Captain Soo-yeon Bae commanded the destroyer Incheon's Fury as it emerged from Construction Bay 17, with armor plating still warm from the fabricators and weapon systems that incorporated technology reverse-engineered from captured alien equipment over the past 50 years. All systems check green, Captain, reported her weapons officer while running diagnostics on the ship's primary armament, antimatter torpedoes loaded and defensive systems online. Take us to the rally point, Lieutenant Soo-yeon ordered, as her ship joined a growing formation of vessels that represented just a fraction of humanity's hidden military might. At the edge of the solar system, Ambassador Jinna Seo received an emergency session summons from the Galactic Council, and she knew this would be her last appearance as humanity's diplomatic representative before the shooting started in earnest. Ambassador Seo spoke Council Chairman Veltar from his position at the center of the Great Assembly Hall. The human military actions in Vaxthari space constitute a clear violation of galactic law, and your species must face sanctions for this aggression. Honorable Chairman, Jinna replied while standing at the podium where she had spent 3 years trying to convince alien species that humanity deserved a place in galactic civilization. Stopping genocide is not aggression, it is moral obligation. The internal affairs of established empires are not subject to interference by junior member species. Chairman Veltar responded with the arrogance that had defined council policy for centuries. Then this junior member species withdraws from a council that values political convenience over innocent lives, Gina said, and felt the weight of history in her words. Humanity chooses to stand with the victims of tyranny rather than the tyrants themselves. The assembly hall erupted in shocked voices as Gina walked away from the podium, knowing she would never return. And across the galaxy, quantum communication networks carried her final message to Earth, confirming that diplomatic solutions were no longer possible. General Wujin Nam led the first human offensive against Vaxthari supply lines, using tactics that alien military commanders could not understand or counter, as human forces struck with surgical precision at targets that seemed random but followed strategic patterns developed by artificial intelligence. Sir, we have confirmed destruction of Supply Depot 7 in the Rigel sector, reported Colonel Minho Park from his command ship as it withdrew from the successful raid. Enemy response time was 47 minutes and casualties were minimal. Excellent work, Colonel. General Nam replied while studying tactical displays that showed similar successful operations across 12 star systems. The Vaxthari are learning that humans do not fight battles, we fight wars. The difference became clear as human forces avoided direct confrontation with major enemy fleets and instead targeted the logistics networks that kept alien armies supplied and operational, while rescue ships evacuated civilian populations from worlds threatened by Vaxthari retaliation. On the fortress world of Haven, where 87,000 Aquari refugees had been relocated, Vaxthari forces arrived with overwhelming numbers and demanded immediate surrender of all human personnel and their alien allies. Captain Suyan Bei received the ultimatum, while her destroyer orbited the planet with 3 other human ships, facing a Vaxthari battle group that included 2 dreadnoughts and 30 escort vessels. Captain, they are demanding we abandon the refugees, reported her communications officer. Estimated time until bombardment begins is 30 minutes. Signal the other ships, Suyan ordered, while her crew prepared for what everyone knew would be their final battle. We hold the line until the last refugee transport clears the system. The Battle of Haven became the moment when the galaxy truly understood what humans meant when they spoke of sacrifice as for human. Ships engaged an enemy force 10 times their size and fought with a desperation that alien crews could not comprehend. Suyan watched her tactical display as enemy fire overwhelmed her ship's defenses and critical systems began failing throughout the vessel while the last refugee transports prepared for hyperspace jump. Captain, main engines are offline and weapons down to 30%, reported her engineering officer. Hull breaches on multiple decks. Time to refugee evacuation, Suyan asked while emergency lights flickered around the bridge. 4 minutes, Captain, came the reply from her navigator. Then we buy them 4 minutes, Suyan said, and opened communication to the Vaxthari flagship. This is Captain Bei of Earth Defense, Force Destroyer Incheon's Fury, and you want to know what humans really believe. Surrender now or die, came the alien commander's response. We believe that some things are worth dying for, Suyan replied and ordered her ship's engines set to overload while she aimed directly at the enemy dreadnought. What happened next was broadcast across the galaxy as human destroyer. Incheon's Fury accelerated toward the Vaxthari flagship, with her fusion reactor building toward critical mass and her captain making no attempt to escape the inevitable explosion. The collision and subsequent detonation destroyed both ships instantly, but the 4 minutes of chaos that followed allowed the last refugee ships to escape to safety, while alien commanders struggled to understand an enemy that viewed death as an acceptable price for protecting innocent life. Admiral General Nam reported to Admiral Choi as news of the battle reached Earth. Captain Bei's sacrifice saved 2 million civilian lives, but we lost 4 ships and their entire crews. General, those crews chose to follow the highest traditions of human military service, Admiral Choi replied while authorizing the deployment of additional forces. Make sure their sacrifice leads to victory. Across the galaxy, neutral species watched recordings of the Battle of Haven and began to understand that humans fought with a totality that other civilizations found both inspiring and terrifying, as every human seemed willing to die. rather than abandon their principles. The Galactic Council emergency session that followed dissolved into chaos, as member species demanded either immediate action against human aggression or protection from Vexthari retaliation, while human forces continued their relentless campaign against tyranny, with methods that redefined the nature of interstellar warfare. In the deep space between stars, Admiral Choi received intelligence reports confirming that 3 more alien empires were preparing to join the war against humanity, and he smiled as he realized the galaxy was about to learn why Earth had spent 50 years preparing for this moment, while pretending to be peaceful explorers interested only in scientific advancement and cultural exchange. The alliance between the Vexthari Empire and 2 other major galactic powers changed the nature of the conflict as the Crystalline Hive and Machine Collective joined forces against humanity, creating a coalition that controlled half the galaxy and commanded resources beyond anything Earth could match through conventional warfare. Dr. Minjun Yoon worked in his laboratory deep beneath the Martian surface, where humanity's most advanced weapons development programs had been hidden since first contact with alien civilizations, and the projects emerging from his research would reshape the fundamental nature of space combat. "Doctor, the field tests for Project Silence were successful beyond all projections," reported his assistant. While reviewing data from the latest experiments, total system shutdown achieved across all electronic devices within a 50-kilometer radius. "What about biological effects?" Minjun asked while studying the technical specifications for weapons that violated several galactic treaties on automated warfare. "None detected, sir," came the reply. "The nanoplague specifically targets artificial intelligence networks and leaves organic life completely unaffected." "Excellent," Minjun said, and authorized production of sufficient quantities to deploy against Machine Collective fleets. Admiral Choi will want these ready for Operation Deep Strike within the week. Across the solar system, human military forces prepared for their largest offensive yet, as intelligence reports confirmed that enemy fleets were massing for a coordinated assault on Earth that would either end human resistance or trigger a galactic war unlike anything in recorded history. Fleet Admiral Haiwan Jiang stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Sol's Thunder as her task force prepared to jump into the Rigel Centaurus system, where enemy forces had established a major staging area for their planned invasion of human space. "All ships report ready for hyperspace jump," Admiral reported her navigation officer, while tactical displays showed the positions of 47 human warships preparing for what would become known as the largest space battle in galactic history. "Signal the fleet," Admiral Jiang ordered as her ship's experimental weapon systems came online. "Today we show the galaxy that humans do not surrender our freedom to anyone." The human fleet emerged from hyperspace directly between the twin stars of Rigel Centaurus, where a massive enemy armada waited in what should have been an impregnable defensive position, but Admiral Jiang had not come to fight a conventional battle. "Enemy fleet composition confirmed," reported her tactical officer. 237 ships, including 15 dreadnoughts and multiple carrier groups. "They outnumber us 5-1, Admiral," noted her executive officer, while damage control teams prepared for intensive combat operations. "Numbers are irrelevant when you control the battlefield." Admiral Jiang replied and activated the most classified weapon system in the human arsenal. "All ships prepare for stellar manipulation." What happened next violated every assumption about space warfare, as human ships deployed gravitational field generators that began affecting the behavior of both stars in the system, while enemy commanders watched in growing horror as solar activity increased beyond anything in recorded observations. "Sir, the human fleet is using the stars themselves as weapons," reported the tactical officer aboard the Crystalline Hive flagship. "Stellar flare activity is increasing exponentially, and plasma discharge events are being directed toward our formations." "Impossible," replied Hive Commander Crystal 9. While his ship's sensors detected gravitational anomalies that should not exist, no species has technology capable of controlling stellar behavior. "Humans do," Admiral Jiang said, over the open communication channel, as her fleet maneuvered behind experimental shielding designed to protect against solar radiation. "You wanted to destroy Earth, but first you have to survive what Earth can do to you." The controlled stellar flare that erupted from Rigel A, lasted for 17 minutes and consumed everything within a 50 million kilometer radius, while human ships emerged from the plasma storm like demons from hell, with their hulls glowing but intact and weapons ready to finish what the star had started. Status report. Admiral Zhang called. As her fleet regrouped after the most devastating display of technological superiority in galactic history, enemy fleet strength reduced by 68%. Admiral, came the tactical report. Surviving ships are attempting to withdraw, but their navigation systems appear damaged by electromagnetic pulse effects. No survivors, Admiral Zhang ordered, and her fleet began hunting down the remaining enemy vessels with methodical precision. Let the galaxy know what happens when someone threatens humanity. News of the Battle of Rigel Centaurus spread across quantum communication networks faster than the human fleet could return to base, as alien civilizations struggled to comprehend military technology that could turn stars into weapons, while leaving the wielding forces completely unprotected. In the Galactic Council chambers, emergency sessions dissolved into panic, as member species realized that humanity possessed capabilities that made their own military forces obsolete, while human ambassadors delivered ultimatums demanding immediate cessation of hostile actions against Earth and its allies. The humans are not just winning battles, reported Intelligence Director Zeth Prime to the Council leadership. They are demonstrating technological superiority that suggests decades of preparation and development beyond anything we detected. How is this possible? Asked Chairman Veltar, while reviewing battle reports that seemed to describe fantasy rather than actual military operations. Because we underestimated them, sir. Intelligence Director Zeth Prime replied. Human merchant ships were intelligence-gathering platforms, human research stations were military outposts, and human colonies were fortress worlds disguised as peaceful settlements. The scope of human deception became clear as captured alien records revealed 50 years of systematic intelligence operations that had mapped every military installation, every strategic resource, and every potential weakness across the galaxy. While Earth's diplomats spoke of peace and cooperation, Ambassador Gina Seo delivered humanity's final diplomatic message to the galaxy from a secure location in neutral space, where representatives of dozen species had gathered to discuss surrender terms before human fleets reach their home systems. The war can end today with complete withdrawal of hostile forces from human space and recognition of Earth's authority to protect innocent civilizations from tyranny. Jinnah announced to the assembled delegates, continue fighting and discover what other weapons humanity has chosen not to use. What assurance do we have that humans will not simply conquer the galaxy once resistance ends? Asked the crystalline hive representative, while his species' remaining fleets retreated toward their core worlds. Because conquest was never our goal. Jinnah replied with the calm confidence that had made her legendary among alien diplomats. Humans fight to protect, not to dominate, and when this war ends we will prove that by building something better than what existed before. The Machine Collective attempted one final gambit by deploying their entire automated defense network against human forces advancing into their territory. But Project Silence turned their greatest strength into their ultimate weakness, as nanoplagues consumed artificial intelligence systems across dozens of star systems. Sir, the Machine Collective has gone completely dark, reported General Nam to Admiral Choi. As strategic displays showed entire sectors of space where no electronic signals remained active. All artificial intelligence networks have been permanently disabled. What about their organic populations? Admiral Choi asked while reviewing casualty reports from the ongoing campaigns. Unharmed, sir. General Nam replied. Project Silence was designed to target only artificial systems, and the organic species under collective rule are beginning to emerge from decades of technological slavery. As human forces consolidated their victories across 3 major theaters of war, neutral species throughout the galaxy began choosing sides, with many requesting protection under Earth's expanding sphere of influence, while others fled toward the galactic rim, hoping to avoid involvement in a conflict that was reshaping civilization itself. The war that began with humanity's rescue of Aquari refugees had become something far larger, as human military doctrine proved. That superior technology combined with absolute moral conviction could overcome any numerical disadvantage while establishing Earth as the new dominant power in galactic affairs. Admiral Choi received the final intelligence briefing before humanity's assault on the Vexthari capital system and smiled as he realized that what started as a humanitarian mission had become the foundation for a new galactic order based on justice rather than fear. 2 years after the first human ships entered Aquari space, the war that had engulfed half the galaxy finally ended as the last Vexthari stronghold surrendered to forces commanded by Grand Admiral Seung-ho Kwon, whose fleet had proven that even the most heavily fortified worlds could not withstand humanity's combination of advanced technology and absolute determination. The Vexthari homeworld of Thexhai Prime lay in ruins not from human bombardment, but from internal revolution as enslaved. Species rose against their oppressors while human forces provided weapons training and logistical support to liberation movements across the former empire. Sir, the last Vexthari military command has agreed to unconditional surrender, reported Colonel Minho Park as his ground forces secured the planetary capital. Emperor Hanul Kim requests audience to discuss terms. Bring him to the command center, Admiral Kwon ordered while reviewing casualty reports that showed remarkable restraint, despite humanity's overwhelming technological advantage, but remind him that he is a war criminal, not a head of state. The meeting between Grand Admiral Kwon and the former Vexthari Emperor took place in what had once been the throne room of the galaxy's most feared tyrant but now served as headquarters for the Terran Commonwealth Military Administration. Emperor Hanul Kim entered under guard, expecting immediate execution for crimes that included the genocide of 17 species but found instead a human officer who offered him a choice that would define the rest of his life. Your Majesty, Admiral Kwon said with formal courtesy that surprised the alien leader. You have 2 options available. I assume death is one of them. Hanul replied while studying the human commander whose forces had conquered his empire in less than 18 months. Actually, no, Admiral Kwon said and gestured toward a chair. Humans believe in redemption even for those who seem beyond saving, and you can choose to spend your remaining years helping rebuild what your empire destroyed, or face exile to a distant world where you can contemplate your crimes in isolation. Why would you offer mercy to someone responsible for billions of deaths? Hanul asked while genuinely confused by human moral reasoning. Because showing mercy to our enemies proves that we are better than them. Admiral Kwon replied, choose quickly because there are liberated worlds that need rebuilding and former slaves who need justice. The transformation of galactic civilization accelerated as the Terran Commonwealth established administrative centers on liberated worlds while human engineering teams deployed technology that could restore devastated planets in decades rather than centuries. Dr. Hyunwoo Kim, whose intercepted distress signal had started the entire conflict, found himself appointed as director of the Galactic Reconstruction Initiative, with resources that included the most advanced terraforming equipment ever developed. The atmospheric processors for new Aquaria are online, and initial biological surveys show successful ecosystem establishment, reported his assistant, while they stood on the observation deck of a massive orbital station. Excellent, Hyunwoo replied while watching transport ships deliver the first wave of Aquari colonists to their new homeworld. How many refugee populations do we have remaining for relocation? Approximately 40 million beings, from 23 species, sir, came the reply. All former slaves of the Vexthari Empire who lost their original worlds to strip mining operations. Then we better build more worlds, Hyunwoo said, with the determination that had become characteristic of human administrators. No one stays homeless while we have the technology to create new homes. The political structure of the new galactic order emerged through negotiations led by Ambassador Jin Ah-seo, who had returned from exile to oversee the transition from the failed Galactic Council to something that could actually maintain peace through justice rather than fear. The Commonwealth Constitution guarantees protection for all species, regardless of size or technological development. Jinnah announced to the Constitutional Convention, where representatives from 400 worlds debated the framework for galactic government. Military intervention is not only permitted, but required when any member faces genocide or enslavement. How can we ensure that humans do not simply become the new tyrants? Asked a delegate from the former Machine Collective territories, where organic populations were still adjusting to freedom from artificial intelligence control. Because human military doctrine is defensive, not expansionist, Gina replied while displaying strategic analyses that proved her point. We fight to protect others, not to conquer them, and our actions over the past 2 years demonstrate that commitment. The proof came as human forces began withdrawing from conquered territories as soon as local governments could maintain order, while leaving behind defensive installations and training programs that would prevent future aggression. Emperor Han Kim made his choice and became one of the Commonwealth's most effective peacekeepers, as his knowledge of Vaxthari military tactics and imperial politics proved invaluable in rooting out remaining resistance movements. Your Majesty intelligence reports indicate a Vaxthari remnant fleet is operating in the Outer Rim. Admiral Quan briefed the former emperor during their weekly coordination meeting. Your assessment of their likely strategy. They will target isolated colonies hoping to rebuild their power, based through terror tactics, Hanul replied while studying tactical displays with the expertise that had once made him a feared military commander. I recommend immediate deployment of rapid response forces to protect potential targets. Agreed, Admiral Quan said, and issued deployment orders that would prevent the emergence of any new tyrannical empires. Your insight continues to save lives. Your Majesty. The cultural transformation of galactic civilization proved as dramatic as the political. Changes as human concepts of individual rights and species equality spread through former slave territories where entire populations learned for the first time that their lives had value beyond their labor on the former Vaxthari capital world. Dr. Hyunwoo established the first galactic university where beings from hundreds of species studied together under educational principles that emphasized cooperation over competition and knowledge over power. Today marks a new beginning for our Galaxy, Hyunwoo announced during the university's opening ceremony, which was broadcast to every inhabited world. We are no longer thousands of species living in fear and isolation, but one people united under principles that value every life. 3. Audience included former slaves, former masters, former enemies, and former allies, all working together to build educational institutions that would prevent future conflicts through understanding rather than force. As the second anniversary of first human intervention in Aquari space approached, Admiral Choi received a comprehensive report on Commonwealth military capabilities that showed defensive forces positioned throughout the galaxy, with response times measured in hours rather than months. Sir, we now have the ability to intervene anywhere in the galaxy within 6 hours of receiving a distress signal, reported General Nam during their final strategic briefing. No species will ever again face genocide without immediate military assistance, General. That was always the goal, Admiral Choi replied while reviewing deployment statistics that showed human forces protecting over 2,000 star systems. Humanity did not fight this war to become conquerors, but to become guardians. The transformation was complete as the galaxy that had once trembled before the Vaxthari Empire now looked to Earth for protection and leadership, while human administrators worked to establish institutions that could maintain peace through justice rather than through fear. Ambassador Gina Seo delivered the first annual State of the Galaxy address from the Commonwealth capital on New Geneva Station, where representatives from every member species gathered to discuss challenges and celebrate achievements. TTO, Galaxy has learned that peace without justice is merely delayed war, Gina announced to the assembled delegates, but we have also proven that species working together can accomplish what none could achieve alone. Dr. Hyunwoo Kim listened to the address from his office at Galactic University, where he continued analyzing signals from across the galaxy. But now those transmissions carried messages of hope rather than desperate pleas for help. The war that began with humanity stepping into a fight they were not required to join had ended with the establishment of a galactic civilization, based on principles that no tyrannical empire could ever again challenge successfully. Somewhere in the deep space between stars, former enemies worked, alongside former victims to build something better than what had existed before, while human fleets stood ready to defend the innocent against any threat that might emerge from the darkness. The galaxy had indeed shuddered when humanity stepped into the fight. But what emerged from that conflict was not conquest or domination, but the proof that even the darkest periods of history could lead to brighter futures, when beings of courage chose to stand against tyranny, regardless of the cost.